look, I get that you invested. The sad thing is that it clearly didn't work out. So
Mhm.
for you to get back an investment that isn't worth what you invested and have us cover that wouldn't be fair. But to recover whatever part of the investment is still there is fair. And we can do that as a service. So basically, we'll help you wind down the physical part of the business, liquidate the inventory that we don't want to move over to the other business. The inventory we want to move over to the other business is your investment, right? That's your investment in that business. Why you have the percentage that you have. But we can certainly help you wind down the other part of it. And all the things that we're doing at market would be this. So we'll just charge that. And then that's how that will be split. And then going forward, we'll split on the online this way. That would be one way to do that.
So right now, I'm in the middle of a negotiation with a CFE agreement. We have a retainer or a 45% POI, whatever's greater. So there's a couple questions around that.
Okay.
The first is before we're paid the 45% POI off the EBITDA for the month, I'm wondering what stipulations might make sense to ensure it's fair for both the business and ourselves. Meaning like is it normal to have a certain percentage of revenue set aside for operating expenses and reserves? Should there be a cap on expenses so profits don't dwindle away down to nothing?
So the way that I have found through lots and lots of iterations that seems to generally work the best with honest, good people, which is hopefully who we're always dealing with, is to have your interest be a percentage of distributable profits so that there are several businesses that can't or shouldn't distribute 100% of the profits. Some of those should go back into the business. As long as the expenses of the business are real and legitimate expenses, and those are being, obviously those need to be paid. Those get paid. Some amount might need to be set aside in addition to that, and then the rest is going to be distributed out. And that way, you are participating at the same level of profit distribution participation as the other principles of the business. So that's how I write things generally now. I don't usually add things like capping payments to related parties and salaries and stuff like that, unless it's a uh, unless it's a baseline deal where it's profits over a certain amount. That's the only time I generally do that. I used to do a lot of things that were a lot more restrictive, but the truth is if I have to play that game and that card, I just would rather not be in business with that person. And I've let a lot of deals go that I experienced that with. And so now I'm much more um, active in being sure that there's payment from the start. So there's cash flow. I structure it so it's distributable so that we're aligned in what we're receiving. We're, all of us, the existing people and us coming in, want there to be profits so that we can get distributed. We do allow a salary for the people who are working full time in the company at whatever the market rate is. And then everything else is a conversation. It's like, hey, we've got this expense coming up, or we've got that liability that we've got to, budget for. We've got to set that aside. I've got one right now where we had a $3.2 million holdback we decided to do as a set aside, which was basically 2 months of no profits distributed for any of us, including full-time people that are compensated based only on profit distributions, because there was this liability that had accrued over a few years that was a contingent liability. I don't think it will actually mature, but we were like, rather than having a sudden surprise for $3 million, let's just take that hit all together for that period of time for 2 months and set those profits aside, and then we'll have it. Right. So, that I hope that helps, but like that's what I've found to work the best. You can certainly, if you're concerned about somebody playing financial games and you still, despite that, want to deal with them, then I would build provisions in the contract that say, um, in determining profits, it's only expenses paid to third parties that are not related in any way directly or indirectly to you, principals that are there. And, you could even put a cap on that, a not to exceed. But if you have to do that, you probably don't want to be dealing with those people in the first place.
Yeah, I had some interesting conversations with good old Chat GPT, and
Nice.
when it was suggesting, owner cap and things like that, it just I didn't want I didn't want to throw that card out there. It just didn't seem right. So I like what you said. Um, part of the in our last meeting, she brought up, so she has a retail store that she's going to be closing. She's got about 1 million invested in that. Just
Okay.
um, so that'll be shutting down, and we were going to pursue the online store. So that's really what this deal would be for. She made a point of saying she'd love to have her 1 million invested in a retail store back before we started getting paid out on our POI. It wasn't a time or place for me to argue that point, but it didn't, to me, it seems like two separate things. Like this is a new venture that's come and gone. Do what you're 40, 55%, whatever you want.
Is
But
she liquidating inventory or anything associated with closing that store down?
so we're negotiating that right now. And we threw out there, we'll help her liquidate all the inventory. We'll run the paid ads, the whole thing.
So you might separate that into two things, right? You might say, look, I get that you invested. The sad thing is that it clearly didn't work out. So
Mhm.
for you to get back an investment that isn't worth what you invested and have us cover that wouldn't be fair. But to recover whatever part of the investment is still there is fair. And we can do that as a service. So basically, we'll help you wind down the physical part of the business, liquidate the inventory that we don't want to move over to the other business. The inventory we want to move over to the other business is your investment, right? That's your investment in that business, why you have the percentage that you have. But we can certainly help you wind down the other part of it. And all the things that we're doing at market would be this. So we'll just charge that. And then that's how that will be split. And then going forward, we'll split on the online this way. That would be one way to do that. The other way would be just to say, look, and I have had that several times, by the way. I just want to get my money back. It's like, me too. I would like somebody else to participate with me in sharing all the losses that I invested money in that didn't work out, that we now know didn't work.
Yeah.
But that doesn't really seem fair, does it?
Yeah.
Right. And then they're like, oh, no, but I mean, I'd like to have it. But so usually you can have that conversation and not have it be an issue. But worst case, you could split it up into two components because you've got two very discrete, independent components between the physical and the online. And then the online, if you do take physical assets like inventory from that over into the online, it would be at whatever market value is for that. So if it's yeah, I would probably do the lower of cost or market. If market is lower than the cost, then make it the market. If cost is lower, make it the cost.
Okay. Um, and then just some follow-ups here real quick. So this back.
And by the way, if it's inventory, I would do it on a consignment basis so that basically she's getting paid back as the inventory sells at that cost that you guys agree on.
Okay. Um, okay, great. So, and then on the distributable profits,
Yep.
is that written into the agreement that you will be part of the decision making on that?
However you want it. Yeah, exactly. However you want it.
Okay. All right. And then
And
lastly,
I'll tell you, like for me, I generally don't care because I'm almost always a minority. So even if I had voting rights, I wouldn't be able to do it. I could certainly say I'm going to participate in it, but I feel again like we're aligned. Like
okay,
I don't because they want to get profits too, and maybe
absolutely.
maybe they feel like the business needs to have a little bit of cash a cash um, hoard to work with, a reserve, and that's okay with me too. So as long as we're aligned on what comes out of the company to each other, I generally find that it works out.
Okay, perfect. And is it normal for the hire of the retainer, the POI, to be paid out monthly, or is it some other uh,
I
time?
want it as frequently as I can get it, depending on how much it is,
Okay.
not less than monthly, but I've done, like, if I'm concerned about payment, it's weekly. It's weekly, bi-weekly, monthly is kind of average. I would not do any deal these days that is less frequently than monthly. It's
Gotcha.
because it's too easy for you to accidentally become their creditor. And,
Right.
the creditor of the seller, the creditor of the business. And one of my least favorite things somebody can do to me is involuntarily make me their creditor. And I know just from everything I've ever done where people owe me money, if it gets to pile up too much,
Yeah.
then it's just insurmountable to them. So they pay everything else and you never get anything.